My name is Matti Kerttula. I work at Complaint as a software developer, and I'm here to talk about JavaScript Interop in Elm. That is how we communicate between JS code and Elm code. Elm can be seen as very opinionated language, being mostly designed and developed by one man, Chuck Hickey. And there are some restrictions for both JS Interop and both JS Interop in the language and then how JS Interop is addressed in the ecosystem. But the Elm language has some basic premises like type safety and no side effects in application code, just pure functions, and effects are managed by the runtime and separate from the testable code. So some design decisions have been made to keep these guarantees while still having JS Interop. About the ecosystem, modules with JS Interop, like ports, are not currently allowed in the main package repository. So, how to find like code samples, how to implement these? Well, Google. You don't find like a ports library for port or ports module for some popular JS library in the main official package repository. Why is this decision made in the Elm ecosystem? It's sometimes said that there might be possible future platforms like mobile or future compiler targets like WebAssembly, but future will tell. Okay. Keeping these constraints in mind, we can continue to ways to communicate with JS. First one is flags. Iska already told you about these. These are basically some initialization configuration for Elm. So you basically just pass these when you initialize the app. And then ports. Ports are not a traditional way of doing foreign function interface, if you can even call it that. Foreign function interface is the way how you call some routines implemented in some another language. But ports has this asynchronous messaging. For example, doing some feature, you might have only outgoing ports or outgoing and incoming ports. But these ports are individual, so they don't have like request-response relationship like client-server model or anything like that. And you cannot just call a function and get a return value. You just push things in some port and maybe receive something from the another. This also means that those calls, outgoing calls, cannot be chainable. Unless you do it that way, that you go the whole Elm architecture update cycle and then take the value and do it again. Unless you do that chaining in the JS side, which you probably should do at that point. As a side point, some people have proposed that ports should be like task in Elm, but so you can change them. But tasks in Elm have this guarantee that they always return with an error or result, and JS code cannot really have those guarantees, so that probably won't happen. Okay, why this way? To keep JS code isolated from the Elm code base as much as possible, because JS code can have possible side effects, and having this boundary helps with type safety. If you try to send some data which is against the signature of the port, and it will throw an exception. I think that in Haskell or PureScript, the foreign function interface is different. That the compiler will trust what you tell it, what is the interface or values or types, and just go until it crashes, but I'm not sure about it. Okay, for completeness sake, I will mention kernel code, previously known as native code or native modules. These are not recommended and not even allowed in the next version. Okay, Iska already talked about this. Why not use this? And I agree. Of course, there might be some cases that you cannot use all the APIs in the browser without this. Not sure. There might be some cases, but goal for the Elm project is to expose all of the web platform in Elm. Who knows when it's going to happen? At least not during this version of Elm. Maybe after the next one is published. Usually, just use ports. If we forget that kernel code exists, we can say that any communication between JavaScript and Elm really goes through ports. Okay, and using ports. Here we have a port module declaration. This is different to regular module declaration because there is this port word in the front. This means that you can use those actual port declarations in this module. And you cannot publish this module in the official package repository. Usually, or it might be a good idea to have one port module per project and just import it anywhere you use it or need it. But basically, you could even declare every module, port module. I wouldn't recommend it. Okay, so port declarations. Iska showed something similar already. Here we have outgoing port. It takes a string and, of course, returns a comment to be passed for the runtime. And then receiving or incoming port, which takes a message handler or message as a parameter and returns a subscription. And okay, this looks similar as Iska's slides. we have subscriptions function which calls this receive port to actually return the subscription. An update function. Here we handle the incoming received message. And actually update the model with that new thing we got with the subscription or from the port. Okay, and then JavaScript side. I was planning to do something fancy here, but what you got is hello world. We launch a create a web worker which returns a hello parameter in 3 seconds. So nothing special, but here you can see the separation between sending a message and receiving one, or subscription for the request, and request is what we declare here. And receive here we send to that port. So there isn't really much connection between these. The Elm code doesn't know when it received this response that when it was what triggered it. So you cannot really chain these, wait for a response and then react to that and go on, use that as a parameter for next one, unless you go this update cycle. Okay, what about if you have a large, complex JavaScript API you want to use here with Elm? So, do you want to have this kind of boilerplate for every function you have in the API? Probably not, and it might be better to not map the JavaScript API as it is, but design the bots depending on what your app needs. So you could even have one outgoing port, one incoming port, and design an API through that, like maybe move a more complex JSON object through that. And maybe at some times it's okay to change for the JavaScript side to own the data and just move to the Elm side what is needed at the Elm side. Okay, that's about ports. I have little about embedding Elm into an existing application. Developer of Elm, Evan Kaplicki, has made this React Elm components, which is actually only 20 or so lines of code, which embeds Elm module into a div, and you can use it like this. So basically you give this Elm component your Elm module as a source prop and set up ports like this. I'm not sure if this is the best way to use Elm in React app, but at least it's possible this way. You can guess that this Elm component wouldn't react much if you just change those properties, props there. So basically you have to communicate through ports or just re-render the whole component and use flags. Actually flags is one prop that is missing this example. Okay, I think that's all. I have some links here. It could be useful. Interop chapter from Introduction to Elm. It's the official guide to Elm. And then one talk by Murphy Randall. He's the Elm Town podcast host, who in this ElmConf talk basically tells the story how he came from a native code implementation and learned to appreciate this ports way of doing things. Then there is ElmTown 13, which actually was mentioned in previous talk. It's a podcast episode where Ryan Chapliki talks about how these ports came to be. And then one link to one document where Evan tells why native code is going to go away in next version. And then a link to React Elm components. That's all.
Any questions from the room?
How large is the repository for the packages? Is there how many packages? Like NPM is so large and has everything.
Actually, I don't know.
Do you usually have a plugin for that if you have some problem, or do you have to make it yourself?
I think we usually select some of those packages. We don't have much dependencies.
I'm not seeing if there's stats anywhere how much there are these packages. But yeah.
Like everyone knows, writing JavaScript is basically package management.
Yeah.
Development.
But of course it's a lot less.
Yeah.
And I think that types of packages are a little bit different. Like in L packages there's really good quality GL abstractions and lots of different data structure handling. Not much UI widgets and stuff like you would find from NPM. I guess that's biggest difference. But then with Elm project you are assumed that you write or design the HTML presentation pretty much by yourself.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything?
So for the project, the size of the one you've been working on, how much JS integration do you have to write in the end? Like, is it hundreds of lines? Is it tens of lines?
I think in this project is very little, but I chose this topic anyway because it's very important when selecting Elm or anything else for front-end development. But we use mostly some small calls to some specific libraries, like reCAPTCHA or something like that.
How fast is the Elm development? Like, how often do you see new big releases like this 0.19?
Well, it's getting slower, you know. Maybe because it's getting more and more complete and big. But you don't know when the next one is coming, when it's ready.
So you wouldn't say that 0.19 is a big indication that it's far from being one?
No.
Okay.
I guess there's rumors going on next summer might be a release for that.
Yeah.
And it took something like a little over a year to do that 1.19 after release of 1.18. And one interesting part is that from update from 1.17 to 1.18, they dropped some features, they simplified the language. I think that it's a nice feature in language development that you are able to simplify the concepts instead of adding more and more and more stuff.
True.
But all those old code bases don't work with the newest.
They have to be translated.
Okay,
And what I've been following in Elm Slack discussions about porting old code bases from 1.17 to 1.18. Usually they are pretty small worktimes, or like a couple man weeks or even a week or less than that. And that pretty much because of that compiler, how it helps you to develop things. Another, you mentioned that from those Interop things you are not able to publish those in Elm package repository.
Yeah.
But I'd like to point out that you're able to publish them on NPM repositories.
Yeah, true.
So you've done the cross into NPM.
Yeah.
So do people do it that way in practice?
Yeah, usually in Elm project you would have dependencies from both. For JavaScript interoperability side you would use NPMs, and for Elm side you would use packages from Elm repository. Of course, the number of those dependencies is a lot smaller than usual from the JavaScript only project.
Okay. This maybe this ports thing is so it's not a familiar concept for well anyone maybe. So maybe people are moving away maybe from Elm to pure script or something with where it's more straightforward. But I like this way so we can have those guarantees still. Yeah, that's it.
Any more questions from the room before? No? Thank you. Matti.